Josh, appreciate you taking the time to hop on an episode. I know we've been kind of talking about doing this for some time, and finding a block of time in your schedule, I'm sure is pretty difficult. So glad we're able to figure something out. So thank you.
Anytime, man. Appreciate you bringing me on. And yeah, I mean, we're both busy guys, so glad we were able to nail it down.
So I kind of, being in the industry, being, in my seat at Prep Baseball Report, I've always known K's Academy. I've heard of K's Academy. They come up in, high level conversations, whether it's, training and player development, stuff like that. But I didn't really know kind of who was behind it, concepts, ideologies, stuff like that behind K's Academy. So I started kind of going down the rabbit hole, and people that we both know, guys like, Ben Diggle, David Seifert, talking to them, they said, hey, you have to talk to Josh. You have to talk to Josh. So kind of went down again, like I said, went down the rabbit hole, found you on social media, kind of found the YouTube stuff and, everything that you're posting there. And one thing that I like to do with, this podcast, it's kind of a, certain criteria you have to be a guest here. Have to be kind of interested in what's going on, what you're doing, and you have to be a high-level human being. And so, I think you meet both of those. So
Well, I
I
think
want to start
my
with,
bribes with Diggle and Seifert paid off then.
yeah, absolutely. So I want to start with, what do you do and why is it so important to you?
Yeah, so K's Academy, it's just kind of one of those things, right? So I played JUCO ball, transferred to Illinois State, was lucky enough to get a chance in professional baseball with the Tigers for a few years. Did that for 3 years, kicked around in independent ball for 2 years, and my body and life was kind of telling me it was time to go. And I had a weird experience from I wasn't very good out of high school. I was like 81, 83 out of high school. Ended up getting a little bit better in college, obviously, get a chance to play pro ball. And then during my pro career, kind of saw things plateau and kind of go the other way. And so at the end of my career, I was trying to figure out what's next. And Heartland Community College was starting their baseball program. So 2007 was their first year. And so 2008 was my last year of playing. And Nate Metzger asked me to, I was working out with Ryan Knox and Evan Farner. So some guys that were in pro ball. When you're in pro ball back, you're trying to find other guys to work out with. And living here in Bloomington Normal and still training at Illinois State, trying to find people to work out with. So those guys became a lot of my training partners. And Evan Farner actually took Heartland the first year as a pitching coach, and Knox was the hitting coach. And so after year one, Farner stepped away and I kind of stepped in. And my background's in kinesiology, strength conditioning, and it kind of just was a perfect fit where I went straight from playing right into coaching. Like literally I got home from playing my last game, and the next, 2 days later I'm at practice. So I was emailing back, pitching plans and week plans to Metzger, and he was kind of running the play while I was out for that fall. And then just really no time to think, right? No time to feel sorry for yourself. And so I was this pitching coach and strength coach both at community college, which, sometimes it's a blessing and a curse of JUCO where the budgets are tight and you need guys to do a lot of things. But it was great for me because it forced me to just learn more and to dive into the human body. And that was kind of what I was interested in anyways. And, after did that for 6 years, full time in terms of, I want to say full time, the first couple of years, we didn't have our own field. We were practicing at our game field was literally like a youth rec field that I remember days of, we would have to get a dry vac and, shovel out shortstop and, do tons of field work just to give it playable. We were working out of a orthopedic facility that had one squat rack and like 2 bars. And so we're trying to run a team of 36 guys through weights, and we had a 3-hour practice. It was JUCO to the max. I was doing personal training in the mornings from like 6, 7 a.m. till noon. Practice was like 12 to 4. And then I would go back and do more personal training from like 4 to 8 or 9. I worked at Applebee's on the weekends for a while. So just piecing it together, you know what I mean? And ultimately, Heartland opened up a rec center and was able to get a full-time job there, which was nice. Did that for a few more years. And, kind of giving you the full background of how I landed where I'm at is like every other coach doing lessons on the side just to survive. And got to the point where we're having a lot of success at Heartland, and local community was really interested in what we were doing. And some of my one-on-ones, I just got frustrated with like the one-on-one lesson setup. It was, dad or kid texts me like January 2nd, wants to throw a bullpen. Cool. What have you been doing for the last 3 to 4 weeks to get ready? They're like, well, I played catch with my dad once in the basement last week. Cool. Let's go rip some sliders and see what happened. Like, it was just a broken system. Kids show up 2 minutes before the lesson, don't prep, and, they leave and they don't do any post throw. And it was just a combination of frustration and I think just tired of doing the one-on-one stuff. And so I said, well, how can we do it different? And basically I just put together a little program, and this is actually year 10. So that'd be 10 years ago, where the idea was whatever they were paying for a weekly lesson, I think back then it was like $30 for an hour or something like that. So could they pay that for the week and do 2 sessions for an hour? One day they would get long toss and one day they would get a bullpen. But both days they would learn how to like warm up correctly, how to activate, how to post throw, how to take care of their arm and be their own coach. And more importantly, like a proper on ramp. So, their shoulders not barking the second week of March when they're trying to throw 50 pitches with their high school program. And so that's kind of how it started. And it just kind of ballooned out. I mean, I sent one email out and thought I would get like 10 or 12 guys, and we got 45. Next year was like 75. Then it was like 100. And I mean, this year I think we're over 250 locally or in person. So I mean, that's kind of, it wasn't like I set out to do this thing. It was just I'm all in on baseball and human performance and human body, and always trying to figure out how to get that 1% better. And basically took what we were doing at Heartland and offered it for the local community, and here we are.
So I'm not in those rooms and those facilities that you were in when you were in your playing days, right? JUCO, Division I, affiliated ball, and some indie ball. Is what you do now, does it hit kind of close to home? And maybe maybe you didn't have the access to the player development that we see in the world of baseball today, or maybe you did and you just want to continue that for players, athletes now. How close to home does it hit because of your playing career?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what drives me a little bit is I just want to know why. Like, why did some things work? Why did some things not? Looking back on my career, again, I graduated high school in 2000, so I'm pretty old. We grew up in a lot of like 1980s football coach, max everything, back squat, let's go, lift heavier, get deeper, all that kind of stuff, where we really didn't understand. And I always had like inklings of, hey man, like I'm 6'3", 6'4", long levered, I don't move like the 5'9" guy, you know what I mean? And so trying to understand how people's bodies move and in space, and understand like the motor preferences. And, before I really kind of dove in and gotten a better grasp on it. And even today, the Dunning-Kruger effect of, the moment you think you're an expert, excuse me, you're probably getting left behind. So, even knowing what I know now compared to what I know then, I still feel like I'm just on the tip of the iceberg of understanding the body. Because as soon as I feel like I got one aspect down, there's something else that I don't even know anything about this. So down the next rabbit hole. But yeah, I mean, it was obviously something worked, because I went from pretty crappy out of high school to decent, and then kind of went back down the other way. So just trying to reflect back on my career and like what happened and how can I, offer a better solution to the next generation. So, yeah, I mean, just looking back on my career, I mean, I wish like crazy I was growing up in this type of era in terms of player development. I mean, every pitcher throws fuel, and I look back, but back when 90 was cool, right? It was like 90 was kind of hard, but now it's like a okay, nice slider. So,
How much of that speaks to just your personality and your drive, your ambitions? I think as you said, pretty crappy coming out of high school, but and then you kind of turned into this kind of guy. How much of that is just you? Like, I guess, and also, when did you realize that you kind of had this, I guess, drive, ambition to be better? I think we can kind of see that both in my seat, your seat, that some people, it comes easier to some people, obviously, just with, you know, their bodies and their physical makeup, but some people also just kind of have it up here, and that helps. So, how much was your progression, your development, just everything you had internally?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to pretend that I had this master plan and it was all going to work out, and I had every step planned, and it's just not even close to the truth. I think inherently I had some, I guess, blessings. I just always wanted to compete. I always wanted to win everything, to the point where like I would make my sisters cry in checkers because I would beat the snot out of them. Like they're not going to win Monopoly against me. Like I'm going to win. So I just always wanted to win. And I think that was kind of like the driving factor. I hated losing more than I liked winning. When I won, it was like, cool, that's what was supposed to happen. And when I would lose, man, it was just so frustrating, to almost to the point of a fault, at not almost, like to a point of a fault a lot of times, where I would be on the mound, and that would probably win my emotions over too much, where I just hate losing. And so I think that drive, it's like the fear of failure that drives me more than winning. And so I think, kind of looking back on it, like I said, it wasn't this, well thought out master plan. It was like, what do you want to do in college? Like, I don't know, play baseball. And so, luckily when you go to a junior college, you don't have to elect a major, or so just, get your gen eds. And then I got to Illinois State and they're like, what's your major? And I'm like, baseball. And so I figured I wanted to suck less at baseball. And if my human body was going to be the thing that helped me do that, that's basically what I decided to study, was kinesiology and biomechanics. And it's just kind of all led me down the path of I'm interested in it. Right. And I think no matter what you do in life, whether it's baseball or it's, everybody will tell you to chase your passion and do this thing and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's great. But I mean, you probably should do something you're good at. And the ideal world is if you find doing something that you're good at and something that you love, like that's like the intersection of happiness, I would assume. So, and that's kind of, again, it wasn't this, like I said, this grand plan. I always wanted to win, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do other than be the best baseball player I could be. And that led me down the path of player development and human kinesiology. And it's kind of all led me to where I'm at today.
What makes Josh so qualified to do what he's doing, both on the academics, the credentials, you're well read, or at least the resume says that. What makes you so qualified on that side, but also the personality, the communication? Because I'm sure a lot of it, a lot of player development is these guys need to trust you. Men, women, they need to trust you. They're putting their careers in some ways, their health in a lot of ways in your hands. What makes you kind of the guy that, okay, I can trust Josh, or I can point to Josh and say, yeah, I can vouch for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point in my career, it's probably a body of work. I would say I have enough social proof. You go back and look at however many players I've coached and some of the successes they've been able to have, and their track record of improving and at a relatively high, health percentage, so to speak, the way they've done it and the longevity of their careers, I would say. But, I didn't have that 10 years ago. I think it was probably just more of my passion of again, when you start at JUCO, like it was probably out of necessity, right? It was like, this guy's the brightest piece of charcoal. he'll take the job. Great. But it was just an opportunity, right? It was an opportunity to do something, to walk in and be the guy that you had to be, and you had to figure it out. It was just sink or swim. And so the best thing I could do was just immerse myself in all things that I had learned while as a player, both in all my professional stops and then also my college stops, and kind of pooling all of the knowledge of what I had and like, hey, this worked for me and here's why I think it worked. And so I'm going to bring that to my athletes, and here's something that I had to do as a player that I thought was stupid and didn't really work for me. Or if we did it, like I didn't understand why we were doing it. And so I'm not going to make my guys do it. And then it's just tweaks. I definitely did not have the system down perfect. I think I was right on a lot of things, but I was wrong on a lot of things too. So, I think over time you just have to fail forward, and you're always going to fail. You just got to make sure it's not catastrophic. And so I've always been a little slow to adopt some things that are maybe um, questionable in terms of their effectiveness, and especially in the pitching development world. Um, for example, one thing I was pretty skeptical on early was like the run and gun 2 ounce light flights where guys are just rocket shipping 106 mile an hour 2 ounce balls. And I understand the thought process behind it, but I understand the data and the science of it, but my logic brain says, hey, when I throw a tennis ball as hard as I can, like that crap hurts. So I've just tried to been a little bit slow to develop some of those things and try to learn more about them before I implement them to really, vulnerable young athletes, right? Because they do trust you. Say, okay, a lot of them just run through brick wall. Okay, and so I take that pretty seriously, and I don't want to lead them astray.
You brought up one of those, tennis ball, running gun. What are some other philosophies, ideologies that um, you stand on? If I were to go to K's Academy, I'm gonna leave knowing that this is what I should be doing, this is what I shouldn't be doing. What are some of those ideologies, concepts that kind of you maybe built your foundation on? Um,
Yeah,
what are
there's
some
a
of
lot of
those
different,
things?
kind of sayings, and if I had to rattle them off, and each one could be like a 20-minute conversation. So, assess, don't guess is a big one. Individualize, don't generalize. Movement drives mechanics. Um, Motor preference. Let the athlete be the athlete, and you know, sometimes KISS is a big one. I like keep it simple, stupid. Sometimes you get all this data and you get all this information and you just suck. So at the end of the day, it's about competing. It's you versus the hitter. Throw strikes, execute, read swings, play your position, and just go compete. You don't have to have a 100%, if biomechanically efficient delivery and a unbelievable spin rate and axis to go win. Um, yes, those things are nice, but if you're thinking about any of that with the batter on them in the box, like you're screwed, right? So trying to be able to separate those. And I could go on a super big tangent, but I would say those are probably some of the biggest ones. Is at the end of the day, movement drives mechanics, and if movement drives mechanics, what movement affects what part of the delivery, and that's where you assess, don't guess. And so when you're putting together a program, we probably all athletes, especially we're talking about pitchers specifically, but all athletes really probably need 80 to 90% of the same stuff. But how do we take that 10 to 20% and kind of fine tune it to what that athlete needs specifically?
Everything that I've kind of seen on, K's or, stuff that you've put out, a lot of it seems, if I'm a player, if I'm a 16, 17-year-old, especially in 2023, I see mobility, I see kind of this stuff, and I'm like, is that really going to help me like throw 90 plus? Um, nothing looks sexy, I guess. Um, why is it so important, and what can you, I guess, for athletes, what can how do you talk them through, like, hey, just it's a process, right? And I think a lot of people don't like to, everyone says trust the process, but no one likes delayed gratification. No one likes sticking to a plan. No one likes hearing, hey, do this for 3 to 6 months and watch the results. Everyone wants kind of everything right away. So how do you talk to these athletes and say, hey, like, I guess trust the process? I don't know. I kind of hate that,
Yeah, no,
but
I think one of the things I try to do is probably to a fault is I try to explain the why of everything. Um, I think is it Einstein. I think his quote is, genius is taking the complicated and making it simple. It's your job as the coach to understand the complicated stuff, But I think where a lot of the art of coaching gets missed is people want to sound smart by talking complicated, right? And so true like peak coaching, in my opinion, would be understanding the complicated, but being able to communicate it in super simple terms so that the athlete can take it, process it, and put it into use. And so I try to explain the why behind things, and I try to use a lot of like stupid analogies that I think hopefully resonate with the athletes of things that might like visually like an external cueing situation. They kind of visually see like a representation of understand why like that matters and why that would produce more force, or why that would help you get into a better position. And so really trying to explain that from the front end, I think helps buy-in versus just say, hey, do this belly breathing thing. And you're laying there on your ground and you're like, this is stupid. Like I should be bench pressing or, lifting something heavy. And that may be true. Depends on the athlete, really. But, trying to get buy-in on those guys, I think comes from education. And at the end of the day, I want guys to be their own best coach. So I don't want them to have to rely on me and be like a bobblehead and a puppet. And if I say, hey man, here's some education, here's why this thing, here's why we do this thing, here's why we don't do that thing. Hopefully they understand the process and they're more invested. And then to your question of the slow burn, I think that's the secret sauce to anything, whether it's player development, whether it's your life. It's just consistent, man. It's showing up every day, even the days that you don't want to get there. And some days you're sprinting and some days you're crawling, but as long as you're moving forward, I mean, that's all that matters. And understanding that I think people look at things not just baseball wise, but just life in general. They look at them in too narrow of windows. They want to see a PR tomorrow or a PR next week, when in reality, like, does it really matter tomorrow or next week? What matters is where's your career going to be in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years? Where are you going to be in 10 years? So I think if people look at longer time horizons, and it's unreasonable that you wouldn't be significantly better if you put in an inordinate amount of work now. So it's just inputs versus outputs, really.
One thing I started doing, I actually started this November 29th of 2022, was working out. I never really worked out. After high school, I didn't. I wrestled in high school, played baseball in high school, and after that, I didn't really work out. And then November 29th of 2022 hit, and I randomly said, I need to start being a more productive human being. So I think I'm now at 215 workouts since last year, and
Nice.
everyone kind of asks me what's the secret? What's the secret? And there's no secret, right? Like there's no secret. There's just kind of doing it. It's not. I work out in the morning. I can't do it at night. I work from home. I sit in a chair all day, but I still will say that I'm too tired to work out in the evening. So, and plus gyms are packed. You know that in the
Yeah,
evenings.
the 5 o'clock crowd. Good luck.
Yeah. So I'm up in the morning, and there's no secret. There's just kind of doing it, and that's why I had kind of pointed to you and asked you earlier. It often just kind of these difficult things, or these things that seem difficult. It just speaks to where you're at mentally, or what the drive, the motivation that you have, more so than the actual task. So I guess the question here is, why don't people trust the process? Why don't people believe in this delayed gratification when there's proof every day of people around them? I just finished the book Atomic Habits yesterday. So
James Clear, good dude.
yeah, so these these things just kind of compound either for you or against you. That's kind of one thing that's been kind of in my mind, and I think people don't realize that if they just get started, and it takes one day, or day one, that's another thing that rings in my head. So why don't people, there's living proof, there's breathing proof, everyone around them, why don't people trust these things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's a lot of things there to unpack for sure, but I think it's easier to it's easier to not try versus fail. I think people's egos are very fragile in this world. A lot of, especially younger generation, have grown up in the Instagram world. I think I'm at a unique age where I grew up without cell phones, without internet, really, which makes me sound so old to say that out loud. But I grew up. My first phone was a freshman in college, and it was like a Nokia brick that had like Snake on it, and we thought that was the coolest thing ever. But in Instagram, it's like I put a post out. How many likes did I get? Or if I didn't get invited to a party, like I didn't know about it, but on Instagram, like about everybody that's at the party. So I think it's the instant gratification world, and then it's the fear of looking dumb. I think it's I'm going to be a failure, and one of my quotes I have in my email tag is the greatest barrier to success is the fear of failure. Um, and it's the same thing for athletes. There was a guy, Terry Sullivan, and is an old time Boston Red Sox scout that came and spoke at a Heartland event, and I thought it was one of the best analogies where he talked about how he would classify players and athletes when he was recruiting them, and one of them was the child what did he call him? Man, I forget the name, but like the style master. That's what it was. It was the style master. And so it was the guy with, the shades, and he's got his sliding glove in his back pocket. He's got 27 wristbands, and he's got all of the swag, right? He's got all the gear, $600 bat, and, all the things. And he goes out there, and it's like his alter ego where he can't handle just being out there and vulnerable himself of just, here I am, here's me. And if I suck, I suck. But I tried. It's, well, if I fail, it wasn't my fault. It was like that other guy's fault, or it was, the umpire screwed me, or it was the weather, or, the field was crappy, or, whatever excuse you got. It was a way to deflect and just not accept the fact that you failed. Um, it's a hard thing to do and say like, hey man, I put everything out there and I did it and I failed. So I think a lot of people are scared to make that commitment for the fear of failure. And so it's just easier to stay where you're at. And ultimately, I think that's what's holds a lot of people back versus the people that are high achievers. I think it's just what we've talked about. It's doing the boring, consistent day in, day out work and understanding that you still might fail.
Your resume kind of speaks for itself. The athletes that you've trained, the pedigree now in year 10, right? And you've trained well over 100, maybe hundreds of, Division I athletes, pro ballers, big leaguers. When have you felt the most accomplished? Is it when these athletes kind of make it, I guess, and whatever make it is for them? Some athletes, have obviously different ceilings, but when have you felt the most accomplished?
Man, that's a tough one. I think at the end of the day, some of the things that I really like kind of light me up is not even the guys that get drafted. I mean, that's awesome, right? And seeing them go through their career, but just the kid that like was just not very good. Like I've been working with some guys that, without saying names, that honestly at fifth or sixth grade, I was like, this ain't for you, man, but I'm going to go do the best I can to hope you have a good experience. And I hope you make your high school baseball team. And I hope you get to share those locker rooms and have those experiences with your teammates and friends. So I'm going to do everything I can to help you get as good as you can be. And to see those guys, some guys just make their high school team. They're so excited. They put in hours and hours of work just to make their high school team. And then seeing some kids come from like, how are you, like, baseball ain't for you, man, to like committing Power 5. And so pretty cool to see the work and see the progression. And it just, again, that's a long time horizon, right? So if I was in it for the immediate gratification, like that ain't it. So, and then some of my favorite things in baseball is, when I was coaching at Heartland, I still talk to a lot of my players today, which is really cool. I think that I gave them a good experience in the college setting enough that one, we won a lot. And so they certainly had a good experience, winning a lot. But two, enough that they felt enough of a personal relationship was built that they still stay in touch with me today. A lot of them are still in coaching in baseball today. A lot of them are not, but I still stay in touch with a lot of my college athletes and obviously players that I train now individually. Still staying in touch with them too. So that's pretty cool to see you guys stay in touch post baseball. So I know that it's not, wins and losses matter, of course, but it's the bigger picture, right? And so building those relationships for a lifetime and the network, I mean, that's pretty cool for me.
What's still yet to be accomplished in maybe your line of work in the industry? What do you want to see from player development, and maybe you're aiming to do this, with every lesson, with every day that you're in the facility? What do you still want to see out of player development? And two, what's still yet to be accomplished for you personally?
Oh man, personally, so little known fact is like I actually still have a medical sales job during the day. So after my college coaching career, I went and ran a few gyms and still doing the K's Academy, kind of building it on the side. And then I kind of fell into an orthopedic sales job that had kind of come around. Ironically, I got offered that job in February of my second year of coaching, and they offered it to me. And I said, I'm interested. Can I start in the summer? And they said, no, now. And I just felt like I was leaving my guys high and dry. And so I passed on it. And it was like 9 years to the date. It kind of came back around. And I was like, well, maybe this is God's way of saying you should do this. And I kind of objectively looked at it, and I thought it would help me with, my degrees, obviously in kinesiology and biomechanics. And it kind of fell right in line with, if my goal is to be the best I can be for these athletes, I need to understand human movement better than I thought I did at the time, which I thought was pretty good. And again, Dunning-Kruger effect of, I thought I had a good grasp on stuff, and then I got into an operating room, and I thought I knew what a rotator cuff looked like because I've seen all the little pictures, and you just can't really appreciate all the structures of a capsule and origination and insertions and the intricacies of the human body until like I've literally been in the OR and seen a shoulder, sawed off, and hips, are a huge piece of the pie, and I've seen 1,000 different types of hips, X-rays. And so understanding just all the intricacies of the angles and, how deep are the sockets and how shallow are the sockets has really kind of taken my understanding of human movement to a whole new level. And also it's created a pretty cool residual effect of network. So all of my local orthopedics, I kind of know fairly well because I used to have to work with them. And so I've got a pretty good relationship with most of the local orthos. If we need to refer somebody, a lot of times it can take a couple of weeks because they're super busy. I can tend to get them in a couple of days, which matters a lot, right? If you're hurt and you need to see somebody, can read MRIs. So it was a really good move for me and my family at the time. But I would say personally, someday maybe I'll get to the point where I can just jump over to K's full time. And again, fear of failure gets everybody, right? So I'm calculating and trying to figure out what's the best move for both my wife and the business, or my family and the business, I should say. So that would probably be my personal aspirations, is just trying to figure out how to make it work while also providing, it's a whole different type of pressure when you're employing people, right? You got people to take care of, and I've got 3 full-timers. I'm probably going to be adding 1 or 2 more pretty soon. I've got 9 part-timers, and I've got a bunch of independent contractors. So all in all, I've got 25 to 30 employees or people that I'm trying to provide for them and their families and their life as well. So it's not just me, and I can't just think about me and my family. I got to try to think about everybody's family. So it's a lot to take in as a business owner for a guy that just wants to be in player development, trying to figure it out on the fly. What's left for player development? Man, again, we know so much, but I feel like we know so little still. I feel like there's so much out there. I still think there's a huge gap between data and implementation of data. I think it's the old school, new school. Like, where's the happy medium? Is it do we need to learn more about data? Do we need to learn less about data? How do we take that data and use it in a constructive manner so that you don't bury the athlete, but also give him some stuff that at the end of the day in small bits that he can take back and work on and implement into his game. He can make an informed decisions, like that type of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I don't know where the line is on player development, but like I said, once I feel like I got one thing down, there's 10 more that I learn about that I'm like, well, I'm an idiot again. I don't know anything. So
What have you learned in terms of kind of being that entrepreneur? Like, what are some of the things that stand out? And probably, yeah, we can probably spend 20 plus minutes on each kind of different thing that you've learned. But I think you bring up a great point where you have to balance these maybe administrative tasks and then the player development, and it's kind of these things kind of get mixed together, and I, you know, I don't know. I think, not saying that you lose passion because of it. Some might, right? Some might see the entrepreneurial stuff and the like I said, administrative tasks, those kind of monotonous things, and then say like, well, I didn't set out to do this. Like, well, where are you on that spectrum, and what have you learned? So I guess, yeah, two-part question. What have you learned from being an entrepreneur and kind of running this thing from kind of being at the top? And two, where do you find that balance between running the business versus running the facility player development side? How do you find that
yeah,
balance?
I think from the entrepreneur standpoint, it's systems. I mean, there's a lot of different things I can go with, but it's systems. You have I think there's a quote out there. It's if what you're doing can't be designed or defined as a system, you probably don't know what you're doing. Um, and so just understanding that if you want to have a staff, if you want to have like with coaches, right? Like coaching in general, a lot of times it's very helter skeltery. It's let's try this, let's try that, let's fix the arm action, let's work on the hips, let's do this, and so it's kind of all over the place, and it's hard to repeat, right? And so if you can't repeat your results and you don't have kind of a checklist or a process to kind of get to your results, it's hard to repeat the same outcomes. And so whether that be in coaching or whether that be in business, is you don't rise to the level of your product, so to speak. You kind of fall to the level of your systems, and I've learned that the hard way. I'm very good at starting new things and running off on a tangent. I've kind of got some ADD, kind of let's go over here and let's do this thing, and we can do that and we can do this. And so kind of having to step back and really try to make sure that all the systems are squared up and communicated and laid out. And I think people look and think things are perfect over here. I mean, they're not, man, at all. Like I said, I'm still working a day job. Like I left the house at 7 a.m. last night, and I didn't get back until 10:40 p.m. So up trying to get the kids out the door for school at 5:55 this morning. My wife wakes up at 4:15 and works out every morning. So it's people sometimes on the outside make it look like it's, oh, they got it so easy, and it's hard work, man. But you gotta love what you do and get after it. Yeah, man. Kids will again, no matter how busy you are, kids will make you figure it out real quick. Because, and to your point, the two-part question was the balance thing, right? Again, kind of going back to looking in micro versus macro. I mean, if you're going to be really good at something, I don't think it's reasonable to be balanced all the time. I think you have to be unbalanced in small windows and pockets, and then try to figure out how to bring it back. Because again, I'm struggling. I want to try to be there for my kids, right? I'm trying to offload some of my night stuff so I can be with my kids more And as like, my kids are 4, 7, and 10, so as they start to get into events, like I want them to be, I want to be with them. I want to work with my kids in the cages or whatever sport or event they choose to go down. So I need to be available for them too. But I think if you're going to be really good at something, everybody's looking for balance, right? Everybody wants work-life balance. I just think, I think it's a misnomer. I think you're going to go through pockets where you're not balanced. You have to be crazy all in on something for a little bit of time and maybe a lot of bit of time. Depends on how far you want to take the thing. So you just got to figure out how much is too much that's hurting other people around you, and is that okay? So
Well, that brings me. I mean, this wasn't on the list, but the burnout. Then, I mean, everyone has kind of their threshold of when enough is enough. But if someone has burnout, do they just not enjoy what they're doing?
no doubt. I mean, I've been burnt out multiple times, right? And so just trying to figure out like, all right, why am I burnt out? What can I do to step back? Is it, have I lost the passion for the thing, or do I just need to take my mind off what I'm doing and shift gears a little bit? Am I physically like sleep deprived, or what is it? And again, it's all like in phases. So for me, I'm going into the winter. From October until March for us in person is kind of crazy in the facility. And then the other thing is we talk about, this is just in person stuff. We have a whole nother workload of remote athletes as well. And so kind of where we're taking the business is obviously a lot of people want to come train with us, but one, we only have so much space. Two, it's not feasible for people to drive to us all the time, especially from small cities or small towns, I should say. Maybe they don't have what we have in their community. So how can we offer what we're doing to them? And so we got a fully built out remote program. And again, it's taken about a year and a half to kind of get everything down, and we're still not completely done. We're adding, like we just added a sports nutritionist. So he's a registered dietitian. He was at a Division I for the last 18 years. He just moved out of NCAA and into college professor, so he can now work with prospective student athletes. So we brought him on board. We added that into our remote program. We're kind of taking some of our systems and basically bringing it to other organizations as well. We just partnered with a few different organizations. So Rhino Baseball, we partnered with them from a travel ball standpoint, but also they're running our winter arm care program up there on site. College of DuPage, Coach Fletch and Bobby Wilson up there have kind of enlisted in us to kind of bring some of our pitching development systems up into their program as well. So we haven't really announced it yet. We just want to make sure that things are going well. So I guess this is an official announcement. So I mean, that's kind of where we're taking things, and again, that's where we're moving with the business, and looking forward to what's coming.
If I'm an athlete, if I'm following the freshman, sophomore, JV, varsity pipeline, like that's kind of my just kind of going with the flow. But I want to improve. And also and I have that fear of failure as many people do. Why should I go to Josh? Why should I go to K's Academy? You're training Division I athletes, pro ballers, major leaguers. Why should I go to you? I'm going to get embarrassed. I'm going to be in a room with a ton of people that know what they're doing, that are on varsity as a freshman, and I'm kind of stuck on JV. Like, why is it important for someone like me to start looking for this, this training that you or K's Academy offer?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is understanding that you're going to fail. I would think it would be unreasonable for you to expect to not fail in anything like the game of baseball. Like nobody goes 17 for 17, and nobody throws back to back to back no hitters. I mean, you're going to fail. So it's get over that. Just accept it and understand like what's a reasonable amount of failure. And when you do fail, what did you learn from it so you can fail less next time? And in terms of like the whole freshman JV intimidated type deal, I think one thing we've done a pretty good job of, at least in house, is creating a pretty good culture of helping the next guy up. Right. And it's not I'm a senior and I'm committed to a Power Five, and this stupid freshman's in my way. It's no, man. Like, help him out. That was you. And at least myself, I'm pretty good at reminding guys that they used to suck a lot too. So, help the next guy. And so we're all pretty good at pulling on the same side of the rope. And obviously inner city, we got like 5 local inner city high schools here. And so they're, when they get into season, they are all obviously trying to beat the snot out of each other. But a lot of them in the off season are friends and they train together and they help other, players get better. And hey man, like, try holding the baseball like this. I'll look over, and you see a lot of the upperclassmen helping the underclassmen get stuff right, or like, hey man, you're doing this move wrong. Do it like this. So it's been pretty cool to watch and see some of the longtime in-house athletes kind of become leaders and help the next guys up.
You mentioned dietitian. Where does new diet come into play for you, and how much do you preach kind of the stuff at home? That's one thing that I've realized in this past year, that okay, I can wake up early and I can go to the gym, but if I'm sitting here eating Doritos watching Netflix, it's probably not gonna work out well for me. So how much do you preach that side of it? And I think that's awesome that you're bringing on someone to kind of help with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a Ferrari doesn't go very fast without gas in it, right? And it's just understanding each athlete is kind of in a different spot in their training career. I've seen sophomores that are absolutely locked in, and I've got pro guys that are just kind of going through the motions. So, trying to get each athlete that understanding where they're at, but at the end of the day, obviously nutrition is a huge piece of it, right? And the prototypical I can't gain weight coach, that was probably me in high school making a lot of excuses. And the first question is, how many calories or how many grams of protein did you get today? I don't know. If it matters, measure it, right? And so we just try to keep it pretty simple. Again, going back to KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Is there's a lot of things nutritionally that are important, especially when you get into like the micronutrients and all that. But no high school kid, cares about his micronutrients and his, microbiome in his gut. You're like, nobody cares about that. It's, hey, bro, I want to get big. So it's how many grams of protein. So generally, we just try to give them general guidelines of like, did you get 7+ hours of sleep? Did you get 100 ounces of water? And did you get 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight? It's kind of like a generic template of like, all right, you weigh 175 pounds, you're trying to gain weight. Let's shoot for 175-ish grams of protein. And again, there's a lot more that goes into that with total calories, but if you give them too much, it's just going to paralyze them. So what's something that they can actually put into play right now, today, and understand and work towards that goal? So just trying to get them to get good habits, really. And again, they're not going to play baseball forever. So if we can teach them to move and to work out and be healthy, and after they're done with baseball, hopefully they carry some of those habits throughout life.
How good are you with those important habits? I think some days I'll work out, I'll eat good, I will get enough sleep, but I noticed that my screen time was ridiculously high, and I think it's kind of the aggregate, right? Like I did a lot of good things, and maybe there was a couple things I could have done better, but I still checked off a lot of things on the list that I wanted to check off. So I'm okay with that day. Just move on to the next one and try to cut
It's a lot
down
easier just to
whatever.
tell other people to do stuff. Don't worry about my stuff.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, no kidding.
yeah, I mean, I kind of try to, right? I try to check that list. My hours of sleep probably aren't as much as they should be. I really try to get higher quality sleep, but I've got all sorts of apnea issues. I've tried all the things and I'm working on it. But yeah, my sleep is probably my number one thing that's not so good. My diet, I do pretty good with. I just generally, you know, I try to eat a lot of the same food, so I don't have to think. Right? It's Chipotle order done. Or if I'm on the road and if I'm on the road, right, it's like the same three things. It's like, all right, Chipotle, Qdoba. Where can I get some like barbecue or something where something that it's like real food? Like I'm trying to stay away from my fried foods. I don't drink calories other than an occasional adult beverage. Um, um, so yeah, I mean, same thing, right? Am I getting some sleep? Am I getting my workouts in? Again, those are things that kind of vary. But yeah, it's just trying to do as many good things as you can and win the day as much as you can. And if you can kind of going back to your James Clear guy, right? It's habit stacking a little bit. It's if then when type stuff. If I'm doing this, then I'm doing that. So I've tried to take like my social media stuff. If I'm doing social media, I'm doing something else. I'm not just sitting on a chair doing social media. I'm walking. I'm doing something else while I'm doing that. So I'm knocking out two birds with one stone. If it's if I'm going to have a drink, an alcoholic beverage, which I don't do too much, I'm going to drink, this much more water. I have to work out this many times a week type deal. So I think it's all in perspective, but I would say I'm B minus.
So I got a new closing tradition. I have 100 questions written down. So you are going to give me a number 1 through 100. I'm going to pick a question that corresponds with that number. And basically the idea of this is just to get some, kind of sometimes send some pretty thought questions to the guests, but this one's for more, it's more spontaneous, I guess.
All
So
right, we'll go with the college number 35.
35 it is. All right. If you can change one day or event in your life, what would it be and why?
Change one event. Man, I would say, man, I don't think I would change anything. Um, Obviously, I wish I would have made the big leagues. I wish some things would have happened there, but um, I would say I'm happy with where I'm at right now. And of course, I wish things would have gone different. And, I wish I would have thrown 94 out of high school. And I wish I would have gotten $1 million signing bonus and gone to the big leagues. But, if I had done all those things, I wouldn't have been in Illinois State. And I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have my family. I wouldn't have K's. And I wouldn't know the people I know. And so I think being happy where I'm at is, even though understanding I didn't achieve the goal that I set out to do initially. I don't want to do the butterfly effect. You know what I mean? If I changed something back then it wouldn't be what it is now. So again, life's not perfect, but at the end of the day, I'm healthy. My wife's healthy. I'm doing what I love, and I got a roof over my head. So I'm cheating the system. I'm not answering.
Josh, thank you a lot. Like I said, some of the guys that we both know said, "Hey, you need to talk to Josh," and I'm glad we did this. Glad we got to sit down, have a conversation. Again, the conversations I have, being where I'm at and in the industry at, K's Academy gets brought up all the time, and now seeing, who's behind it or, one of the main guys behind it, I see why it's been successful and why it has the pedigree that it does. Not only because of, how passionate you are about what you do, but, if you have a great head on your shoulders, man, that's like, this conversation has been awesome. There's, you know, you can talk about hard work and stuff like that, but I think you kind of get it. Like you understand that there's life, right? And there's a lot of components that filter into life and passion and your business. And from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've got it figured out as much as you don't say you do. So thank you. This has been awesome.
I appreciate you having me, and yeah, definitely don't have it figured out, but all I know is that I'm going to keep trying and keep pushing forward for our athletes and for my staff and family. So I appreciate you having me on, and this was awesome.